I decided to call this episode Brush with Greatness because I want to talk about five different people that I covered a short period of time on all of them, one longer than the others, but all individual times that were kind of compact. I mean, we've all heard the great stories and the audio and the pictures of all five of these men and their films and their political statements and everything. But that's not what I want to do. I want to touch on what my moment with them. I think that's probably more unique and sort of the purpose behind what I'm doing here. And the first one would be Nelson Mandela. And we all know the history of Mandela and being locked in prison in South Africa for over 20 years and still sticking by his guns. And then finally got out after apartheid was dismantled, and then he became president of South Africa. Before he became president, he was doing a tour of the United States. And I was with UPI Radio at the time, and I got the chance to travel with him on some of that tour. And he, the moment I remember the most was in Oakland, and he was going to be speaking at the Oakland Coliseum. And we were delayed, and we're waiting for, and there was a pretty big press crew. I mean, obviously, we had reporters from every part of the globe who were there, and I was very fortunate to be one of them. And the interesting thing about it was we all kind of dubbed it the Nelson and the Mandela's World Tour. And that was where we referred to it. Come on, we're a bunch of reporters and hanging out with each other and hanging out with these great guys. And, you had to be in awe of who you were with. But at the same time, you couldn't be biased. You couldn't be in awe. You couldn't show that. And because you had a job to do, you were covering these people as if they put their pants on the same way you do and everybody else does in the world, because that's part of what a reporter does. You have to break it down and make that human transition from the man you see, that icon you see on the screen, or that icon you see on television, or leading a rally or whatever, to make them relatable to the listener, the person who you're talking to, who you're reporting to bring that home. And that's what happened with Mandela. We were waiting backstage in Oakland. And like I said, it was dragging out there. I don't remember if it was the weather or whatever it was, but for some reason, everything was being delayed. And Nelson Mandela came back to the staging area where we were. And it was just basically a room underneath at the Coliseum, or underneath the Coliseum, whatever. And there we were. And he walks back like any normal guy would, just, hey guys, how you doing? They treat me okay. Everything good, and he just sat down and just started talking. And this is all off the record stuff. It was nothing as far as news. It wasn't newsworthy. But what it was this man being that human communicator, that guy next door. And it was Nelson Mandela. And knowing his history, knowing his past, knowing how big he was on the world stage, here he was just sitting down like he was having a cup of coffee with us, and just talking. And it was just so great. And I gained a lot of respect. I had respect for him anyway, but, I gained so much respect at that moment. I don't even remember much of what happened on the rest of the tour. You can listen to the speeches, you can find them on YouTube, and that kind of thing. But what you won't get is what I just told you. And that to me was just one of the greatest things. Jesse Jackson was another one. Jesse was running for president many times. And, people make fun of Jesse, because of his speech patterns and the things he says and the way he says them. And that's unfair. But, it is what it is. And I traveled with Jesse on when he was running for president, again, with UPI Radio. And it was just, we were on the bus, and the presidential tour campaign bus. And those are great moments, because there you are with the candidate, and they'll just come back and they'll just start talking again, like Mandela did. But, sometimes it's not as sit down and have a cup of coffee type of thing. and you're hoping for something because it's on off it's more on background than it is on off the record, because off the record you can't use, and on background it's like, hey, it was a source or whatever. And he came back, and I remember in San Francisco, night of the primary, and it was like just buzz. And he was going from room to room to room, and I was kind of stuck in the main convention center waiting for the event to happen, him to come out afterwards. And we all knew he wasn't going to win. He knew he wasn't going to win, and but it was just a lot of gaining respect for the man at that point. I was always impressed, and we used to joke about it. I was always impressed how he could bend his. He'd always come and say, "Keep hope alive." And I can't bend my thumb. He would bend his thumb back to like here, and keep hope alive. And it was kind of funny. But Jesse was just great when it came just coming back and just shooting the breeze with us, and then he'd be off on his tangents and doing other stuff. So it was sort of this craziness on the Jesse Jackson tour. Now, the other great world leader that I covered was Pope John Paul II. And actually, that was started with Pope John Paul I. Because when I was working in El Paso at KELP Radio when the Pope died, and they named Albino Luciani as Pope. And he was the mini Pope, the short-term Pope. But he took the name John Paul I. And we talked with the Bishop of El Paso, who had been there for the event where it was staged, and I was interviewing him, and he was telling us about this whole thing, and it was such a momentous time, because here was this guy Albino Luciani, who really nobody knew much about, who becomes Pope, and then all of a sudden, within a matter of a couple of weeks, he was dead. He died, and he didn't get to be Pope very long. And then they brought in John Paul II, who was Polish, the first Polish Pope, and like forever, no, not an Italian Pope. And so we did an interview, had a roundtable interview with the Bishop of El Paso, who happened to be there. And he said he was there that morning when Pope John Paul I died, and they came running down and saying, hey, the Pope's dead, the Pope's dead, the Pope's dead. And they all thought it was a joke. They thought, yeah, right, the Pope's dead. And they realized the Pope really is dead. And it came about that you kind of felt that it was one of two things. Either people really made a mistake and it's not what God wanted, or God loved this man so much, he wanted him to be Pope, but he couldn't let him be Pope for very long, because John Paul II had to come on the scene and become, probably one of the most loved popes of all time, and making changes and no matter what you think about the popes and Catholicism and the politics involved with all that, John Paul II was a great guy. And so when I was with UPI Radio, he was doing one of his U.S. tours, and I got to travel with him. And part of one of the things, and we had a name for that one too. We had actually hats made up that said Vatican Road Crew, So I still have it somewhere. I don't know where it's at, but so anyway, we're traveling with him, and the coolest thing, my personal connection, was he spoke at an enclave at the San Fernando Mission. Now, I grew up part of my life in the city of San Fernando, and the mission holds some dear moments to me, because some times that I went there and things happened that, I actually went there the day John Kennedy was killed. And I stayed home from school because we had relatives out and we were going to go to the mission. And that was one of my connections to that. But so anyway, the Pope goes to speak. And we had a private enclave. There was probably about 50 priests and bishops and at the San Fernando Mission. And they put us, the reporters, it was like we were in a pool, which is, just a select group, one from each radio, TV, magazine, newspaper, wire service. They put us up in the balcony overlooking where the Pope was speaking. We're kind of looking right down, and he was facing us. And um, the, I forget exactly how it happened, but there was a shotgun microphone, a Sennheiser shotgun microphone, which was very expensive, and it was laying on the one of the seats up there. And I picked it up and I asked, "Hey, whose is this?" And everybody said it wasn't theirs. So um, I handed it to one of the security guards, and a couple hours later, um, the security guard comes to me, and he says, hands it to me. He says, "Here, this is yours." I said, "No, I found out." He goes, "No, consider it a gift from the Pope. It's nobody else's. It's yours. You can have it." And I still have that microphone today. It doesn't work anymore for some reason. It went bad, but this was like a $300-400 microphone, and was given to me personally. So that was my connection with the Pope. Um, Two other people were actually entertainment people, and I want to mention them. Bob Hope, who was obviously this huge figure on the comedy scene and radio and television and movies, and just this great American icon. They were coming up with one of the craft specials, which he did every year or 2 years or whatever. And then they would have, they would send out invitations, and we'd get a slot. And we'd go out to Bob Hope's house and do an interview. And Bob Hope's house was in the Toluca Lake area, and it was huge. I mean, just had this huge, big property, big old house. And the guardhouse where you went was actually a 3-bedroom home, and sometimes you got to go into the house. Sometimes you did it in the guardhouse. Sometimes you did it in the garden or whatever. And they scheduled mine, and mine happened to be in the guardhouse. And I sat down to my one-on-one interview with Bob Hope. And here was this great man who made millions and millions and millions of people laugh over almost 100 years. I think he lived to right around, I don't remember exactly how old he was when he died, but the most boring interview of anybody I have ever done, along with the guy played Ben Casey, Vince Edwards. The two most boring interviews. I mean, here I am. I'm talking to Bob Hope, the funny man. The guy who could crack jokes and just make people laugh. All just boring. And it was like, it wasn't a hard interview to do. And I didn't have to pull stuff out of him, but it was just boring. And I sat there and I interviewed him for probably 20 minutes. And the only thing I really remember was, he talked about, I asked him about being, greatness and everything. And he talked about people would say he was an icon or a legend. And he said, yeah, I guess that was what people thought, but he was kind of just the average guy. And the one thing that always escaped him that he wanted was an acting Oscar. And he did some really good acting during his career, but he wanted an acting Oscar. They gave him a special Oscar, a lifetime achievement or something like that. And he said that was okay, but he really wanted for earning an Oscar. And he talked about Paleface, the movie, and some of the others that he did some really good work on, and not so much the road pictures, because with Bing Crosby, because those were larks, those were a lark. But yeah, I was stunned at how boring he was. And then the other one I want to tell you about was Jimmy Stewart. And Jimmy Stewart, while maybe somewhat boring, but was always fun to interview. And he always had this halted this. I'm a Jimmy Stewart. I can't do it, but you've heard him so many times in movies and whatever, where he has this halted speech. And at UPI Radio, he was one of our main contacts for obituaries. And at that time, when somebody died, somebody big in Hollywood or even somebody medium big, we would call people that were associated with their careers, or some sort of iconic person that could comment on what they were like in Hollywood, how good they were, the legends that talk about the films. We put together these pieces with music and sound and film clips and interviews with people that we would put together for the radio network. And I used to have a great Rolodex, had all these stars in it and everything, all their home phone numbers, and now they're all dead. It's like it sits in my locker, and it's like nobody is alive. I can't call anybody. Um, but anyway, now I love doing the obits. Make no mistake about it. I just love doing the obituaries. It was just something I enjoyed. I love putting the production together and their memories, and which is, I guess, why one of the reasons I'm doing this series of shows stories of my life, right? Um, anyway, so one of the days, an actor died. He was a well-known character actor today, but he was old. He was like his 80s. So all of his contemporaries were pretty much dead. There was nobody we could call that worked with him, and he wasn't big enough to, warrant calling someone who was huge, you know. And so we kind of left it at that. Well, one of the wire directors, Jacques Clayton, said, "Now we need to react. React's going to make this story." And he said, "Why don't you call Stewart?" I said, "You want to call Jimmy Stewart?" He says, "Yeah." I said, "Well, only if there's a connection." I looked it up, and they happened to be contract players for about a year or so at the same time. So in the same studio. So they probably ran into each other. And so I decided to call Stewart, and I called him at home. And his wife answered, which most of the time that's what happens. She answered the phone. And I said, "Miss Stewart, is Mr. Stewart there? It's Bob Brill from UPI Radio Network. I'd like to, if he's there, I'd like to talk to him." And she goes, "Yeah, just hold on a second." And she didn't cover the phone totally. And you could hear her turning away from the phone and saying, "Jimmy, they want to talk to you. Somebody must have died." And it was like, and I had to hold back laughing because here I am. There's this great actor. I mean, from so many films and TV and just everything. And he was was in the military during war, and just he's reduced by his wife to being somebody wants him to talk to them because somebody died in Hollywood. And it was just hilarious. And it wasn't the only time that happened, because I know in Bob Fuss's book, my former colleague at UPI Radio, he had the same story. And so it happened to him as well. And I'm sure it happened to others, who called. But it was just so funny, and I laughed. And he came to the phone. We did the interview, and it was just great. It was, he talked about, and we couldn't talk about the actor himself so much. So I realized that. So I just asked him, I said, "Well, talk about the importance of the character actor." And he went off. Really went off and told us great tales about, how important the character actor is to the main actor, which he was. And because he started out as a bit of a character actor in his first few films. But it was just a great time. So those five are, and there's a lot of others I had brushed with greatness with, and I'm thinking about who to talk to in the upcoming episodes. But I hope you enjoyed these, because they're five people who were just iconic, and I had the privilege of spending just that much time with in my radio career. Join us again for another one tomorrow.